really honored to be here today and presenting to the panel or to this session. We're honored to participate along with MoEngage. We're a key partner for MoEngage. Cinch, if you're not familiar with us, we're the world's foremost tier one messaging aggregator. We're connected to all the big telcos throughout the world, and through our pipes pass most of the world's messaging traffic, be it text message, video message, picture message, so on and so forth. We're also a key player in this communications platform as a service space. So it's in that vein that I'm going to share with you today some of the research that we most recently did that focuses on mobile customer experience in the post-COVID transform world and what have you. I'm hoping that you'll find some of the insights that we're sharing super useful and helpful. And please feel free during the course of the session to table your questions. I'm going to deliberately allow for time at the end to address any that come up. So with no further ado, I want to start out by planting a clear stake in the ground. Make no mistake about it, we sincerely believe that mobile's become the centerpiece of customer experience. And lest you believe that this is just a biased opinion, there's probably a few facts that well back up this opinion. First and foremost, if we think about web traffic worldwide, almost 53% of all global web traffic now occurs on mobile devices. Here in the United States, that's 58%. 63% of US organic search traffic happens on mobile devices. To no great surprise, the consumer, when they're in that moment of searching for things, pulls mobile out of their pocket and starts to search. 48% of email opens now happen on mobile, which actually exceeds desktop, oddly enough. So the vast majority of consumers use mobile to browse their email and decide what they're interested in and what they'd like to discard. And to no great surprise, 98% of all social activity, in particular Facebook, stems from some kind of mobile device. The same thing holds true for Twitter and Instagram and TikTok as well. And then lastly, as we think about video and content consumption, be it news or weather or what have you, almost 80% of all video views now are occurring on mobile devices. So it's become sort of the fundamental way that consumers engage with brands that they know and they trust. And those aren't just retail brands. In many cases, they're the financial services brands that they depend on. Again, to the point that this isn't just our opinion, about a year and a half ago, our friends at Adobe and eConsultancy did a study. And what they did in this study is they reached out to 3,000 CX professionals worldwide, and they polled them about their priorities going forward. And I'm sharing this chart with you because as you look at this chart, think about the dark bars, reflecting the fact that these are elements that are central to customer experience. And what I've taken the time to do is highlight all of those that are mobile specific. So anything that you see starred, be it tablet apps or push messages or text and SMS and MMS messaging apps, all of these end up being predominantly mobile experiences. So again, make no mistake about it, mobile's become the centerpiece of customer experience. About a year and a half ago as well, we did our first research project as Cinch, and we reached out and we polled over 2,000 consumers. And what we were anxious to understand is what they were looking for and what they were expecting as it related to messaging at this point. And what we learned is that the vast majority of consumers are pivoting. They want to go from text-based experiences to rich media. And by rich media, what I mean is picture and video messaging. They're looking for more engaging experiences. They're also looking for personalized experiences. They're tired of being spoken to in an impersonal way. They're tired of brands treating mobile much like email, which is almost in a batch and blast form. And so what they're looking for is very personalized one-to-one experiences. And then as well, they see SMS as part of an overall experience that they have with your brand. They're looking for SMS and that experience to span all of their experiences, regardless of the channel that it happens on. And then lastly, they're shifting. They want to move from one-way conversations, again, where they're being spoken to true conversational messaging. And by that, I'm going to shed a light on this notion earlier, but when we think of conversational messaging, there are more rich forms of messaging. You're seeing mediums like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and Line and Viber and Kakao and Apple Business Chat become preferred means that consumers communicate with their brands going forward. And again, we don't expect this to be a short-term phenomena. So mindful of the fact that that's about 1.5 years old, we went back not long ago and we attempted to do some more research. And what we were anxious to do is understand in this post-COVID world, what's happening? How have consumers' attitudes shifted? How are they changing? What's that mean to the brands that we serve? And in the world of FinServe, we're partnered with the likes of Wells Fargo and Bank America and a whole bunch of providers that behind the scenes, if you will, orchestrate experiences. Some of the major application services providers, including MoEngage. And we wanted to bring this research to our partners and help them understand what the opportunities were going forward. The research that I'm sharing here is available on our website. You can probably find it just by hitting our homepage and the Insights tab. But if you're curious to dig deeper into some of the findings today, I welcome you to visit our website and download it. But having said that, what I wanted to do today is sort of focus on some key takeaways from this research, because I think that you'll find them really informative and useful. To no great surprise, the world that we all knew before is gone. Consumers believe that. They're anxious to avoid crowds. They want to avoid unnecessary travel. But more importantly, what we've seen in no unmistakable fashion is digital transformation is front and center for all of the brands that we serve, be they retail brands or FinServe brands or brands that may be involved in travel hospitality. The consumers pivoted. They're no longer anxious to visit the place of business or a shopping mall or anywhere else. Instead, what they're looking for is compelling digital experiences. They're shopping online more often, but more importantly, they're looking for the brands that they trust to be more relevant in those mediums and to begin to light up experiences that matter for all of them. The other thing that we learned in our study is that consumer expectations, to no great surprise, are changing. They're looking for more digital interaction and messaging options from the brands that they trust. They're looking for shopping experiences via mobile, but also via messaging channels. And I'll shine a light on that later in the presentation. And then as well, they're looking for mobile-first experiences with these brands. And so having said that, again, this is no great surprise. You would almost expect some of these findings, but suffice to say, what we're seeing in our world is that digital transformation is accelerated, and the challenge has been placed for all brands to become far more relevant in this world that's now in front of us. We also discovered, to no great surprise, that there's a lot of opportunity that's resident in this too. As we polled consumers, one of the things that we discovered is that there's a whole variety of ways that they're looking for brands to serve them better, with mobile in particular, or with messaging. And be that, they're looking for health alerts via messaging, if you will. 14% of consumers have used those, but 78% find them useful. And then whether it's service outages or notifications, you see the opportunity gap that exists. Consumers, in no unmistakable fashion, have said that they're looking for conversations They're looking for digital experiences that are predominantly mobile, and they're looking for personalized experiences, again, from the brands that they know and they do business with. Some of this also came back in another finding, which is we begin to dig in, and what we wanted to understand is by generation, does this differ? And it does. In particular, as it relates to personalized experiences, the younger generations, Gen Z and millennials and Gen X, are screaming for personalized experiences. They're looking for their trusted brands, their trusted banking and financial services partners to personalize the experiences that they're seeing. In particular on mobile, because if you think about it, mobile's arguably the most personal device that we all have. And so again, they're tiring of being spoken to. They want to speak with the brands that they trust. And they're looking and hoping that these brands personalize those experiences. The other thing that came back out of the study as well is, to no great surprise, consumers are looking for real-time shopping experiences. 76% of the people that we polled told us that they want to be able to snap pictures of things that they may discover in the real world, and then potentially have a messaging bot search for the product online and then engage them and answer questions that they may have about that. And then 92% of the people that we polled said that they're looking, if you will, for mobility to help find products, so that they don't have to visit a store per se, so that they might be able to buy it online. And again, this just sort of really drives home how much consumers are turning to mobility to answer gaps in this new post-COVID world. Along the same lines, they're looking for richer experiences. RCS stands for Rich Communication Services. It's quite frankly the future of text messaging worldwide. Here in the United States, RCS adoption has been slowed, and part of the slowing is that Apple hasn't yet gotten behind it. But elsewhere in the world, RCS is becoming the preferred way that consumers engage with brands. And rightly so. RCS brings to life very rich experiences that are not only conversational in nature, but imagine an experience where I can have carousels that show products or services that I might be able to scroll through. So consumers told us in no unmistakable fashion that they really find these kind of experiences that mediums like RCS deliver super useful. The younger the generation, the more impactful, if you will. The Gen Zs and the Gen Xs and the boomers find these experiences super useful. So as we think about the younger consumer, the millennials in particular, the Gen Zs, they're telling us in no unmistakable fashion they want different experiences with the brands and the enterprises that they do business with. The other thing that we discovered is, to no great surprise, conversations are on the rise. Part of that's been fueled by the fact that apps aren't cutting it anymore. And again, this isn't just my opinion. We're seeing this in reality. What we discovered is that 50% of smartphone users over the past 30 days have downloaded 0 apps. But more importantly, even the ones that are downloading apps, what we know about apps in general is that the average app loses 77% of its users within 3 days of being downloaded. So this is this phenomenon of download, use and experiment, and then delete. And then 5% still use that app after the 90-day mark. And then more importantly, we also know that the average consumer has about 25 apps on their phone. Of those, 3 to 4 are branded retail apps, and that includes Amazon. So as you think about space on the consumer's handset, there's precious little of it. And then lastly, if you think about the average consumer, they have approximately 25 apps on their phone. About 10 of them construe about 97% of their user time. So it's basically these apps that are go-to and trusted apps that they turn to for experiences. Meanwhile, messaging continues to explode. 55% of the time spent on smartphone is related to messaging in one form or another, be it simple text messaging or more richer forms of messaging, including conversational, if you will. And then likewise, messaging is exploding. It's growing at a rate of 30% annually. So as we think about that trend playing out, various forms of messaging are going to be super important to consumers. And that's part of why we've partnered with MoEngage. We seriously believe that mobility in all forms of it, as does MoEngage, is super important to the brands that we serve going forward. As we think about this as well, there's a whole phenomenon that's taking place around us, and that's the explosion of all kinds of different rich messaging channels. I talked about RCS earlier, but there are messaging chat apps like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. Elsewhere in the world, we're seeing WeChat be a predominant means that consumers are engaging brands in China, by way of example. Line and Viber have become preferred chat mediums. And then there's vertical apps like KakaoTalk and Telegram that have geographic footprints that are germane to certain markets. So having said all that, the challenge that we all have is reaching the consumers in those mediums that they know and trust. As we think about those mediums, if you will, WhatsApp has a very interesting footprint. Worldwide, there's approximately 2 billion monthly active users of that chat app. That's by far and away the largest chat app in the world. The second largest chat app is Facebook Messenger with 1.3 billion monthly active users. As you think about that for a minute, Facebook has recently announced plans to merge WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger into one unified messaging platform together with the Instagram Messenger. What that's going to bring or represent is an audience of about 3.5 billion consumers who are very active on a monthly basis using those apps. So as we think about that, it's not just these, it's other messaging apps that they're fleeing to. And so mindful of that, it's super imperative that brands and enterprises begin to think about reaching the customers in their channel of choice. That's where they happen to be today. And candidly, they're expecting that the brands are there and they're there to serve them. Not just to market to them and to take care of them. So again, we're trying to help solve this problem. And the way that we're solving it is for our partners like MoEngage, we don't want them to have to integrate with all of these channels independently. That's a nightmare. So we've come up with one API that literally reaches SMS, MMS, RCS, as well as all of these chat channels. And so if you think about it, it makes it super easy for not only enterprises and brands, but our application service provider partners to integrate with this technology and to reach these consumers in their channel of choice. And the reason that that's important, candidly, is that when we think about simple text messaging, it's super powerful. It's far more engaging, if you will, than a lot of other channels, including email. The average consumer within 3 seconds opens a text message. But when you marry text messaging together with either picture or video or what we call rich messaging, if you will, it's 15 times more impactful. And candidly, it drives even more conversions. Consumers are craving that imagery in their messaging experience. And then lastly, when we shift to what we call true conversational messaging, it's 40 times more impactful, if you will. It drives at least 120 seconds worth of engagement, because there I've not only engaged the consumer, but I'm participating with them in a conversation, and I'm putting information in front of them that's helpful to solve their problems. And in some cases, I'm doing this on an automated basis. I'm using chat technology and artificial intelligence to automate these conversations. So what's all this mean? It means that we've got a far more powerful means to engage the consumer. If we think about email, email is by far and away the workhorse channel of consumer messaging. But candidly, consumers' appetite for email is waning. We're seeing open rates continue to drop in certain cases, and email marketers are placing even more emphasis on getting more consumers to engage with and open their emails. But if you think about a typical email program, 25% is a pretty good open rate. Whereas SMS, today what we're seeing is 95% open rates. When that message shows up on the consumer's handset, they tend to engage with it very, very quickly. Again, usually within 3 seconds of receiving it, but within 2 minutes, they've opened that text message. What's cool about conversational messaging is it's even better. What we see is a 98% open rate. By the time we've married pictures and video and voice and chat technology into that experience, it drives a much richer experience for the consumer that they find more engaging and more helpful, if you will. So having said that, we believe that there's an opportunity that's resident in capitalizing on conversational messaging. And as we think about that, again, what this does is for the brands and enterprises that are out there, it provides literally an opportunity to create competitive advantage in your markets, to use mobile technology better, to add value at every touch point of the consumer's journey with your brand. And for some, it's simple search. For others, it may be how they begin to engage with your app. For others, it's really all about conversational messaging. But as you think about strategies going forward, understand that messaging and conversational messaging should be front and center, because that's where consumers are today. And they're ready to engage with the brands and the businesses that are there in those mediums and that are providing what I'll call relevant experiences in those channels. But also imperative is adding value where it matters the most. And by that, what I mean is it isn't all about mobile. As I said earlier, focus on mobile customer experience, because candidly, most forms of customer experience have now become mobile. You can't just compete on price or the uniqueness of your service or your brand, if you will. Today, it's about more compelling experiences, more compelling digital experiences, more compelling mobile experiences. But I also urge you to think about making it conversational. I said this earlier, but consumers don't want to be spoken to. They want to speak with the brands that they know and trust. Many times, the way that they want to engage your brand is they have questions that they're looking to get answered. And candidly, they're tired of calling call centers or calling your place of business, because in many cases that means waiting on hold forever. Instead, what they're doing is they're fleeing online, and they're looking to get their questions answered online, and not just using Google, preferably on your website or in your app. And so as we think about that, providing ways that they can converse with your brand and get questions answered, super important. And then lastly, my guidance is personalize those experiences. The consumers are craving that personalization. Some of that data flows out of your CRM environments, but the more that we can be relevant to the consumers we serve, in particular in the mobile arena, the better kind of engagement that will generate, and ultimately the better customer experience, and then the better net promoter scores. So I'm going to close with sort of summarizing this. What we know about mobile customer experience is that done right, make no mistake about it, it drives revenue. It can increase conversion anywhere between 30 and 50% as compared to any email, if you will, or standard SMS campaign. So we think that there's an opportunity that's there. It also reduces costs. Done correctly, conversational messaging features automated conversations that may be facilitated by chatbots that can converse in well over 100 languages, if you will. This reduces customer care costs. It deflects the number of consumers that need to speak to a live agent. And ultimately, what it does is it improves the customer experience. It all of a sudden enhances your net promoter score. It literally improves how consumers trust and believe in your brand. So as a part of strategy, understand that mobile's got a central element. And together with our partners at MoEngage, we're prepared to help and to facilitate these strategy discussions. As you can tell, we've dug in and we know a lot about this channel, but it has enormous promise going forward. In fact, I dare say it really is the future of all customer experience going forward. So with that in mind, I'll close with one last slide, which is just a reminder, if you want to dig into this research, it's certainly available to you, and you'll find it on our website. But with that in mind, I want to pause and entertain any questions that may have come forward during the session.
Hey, thanks, Michael. I think audience are super excited, and I don't have any questions right away. But yep, hey, a quick note to the audience, guys. You can use the Q&A window if you have any questions to Michael. Please feel free to ask your question. There is no right or wrong question. So yeah, sure. Michael, I do have one question. Because we work closely with each other, I know that you guys are building some interesting stuff about verified cards and other stuff. So could you talk about something on, some cool stuff that you guys are working on currently?
Yeah, absolutely, Brad. So beyond this conversational API that I discussed that makes it super easy to integrate with various enterprise systems, be it customer data platforms or marketing orchestration engines or what have you, we've rolled out a whole array of new rich messaging products, tools that are allowed to, are designed to allow brands to help augment simple text messaging programs with picture messaging, with video messaging and what have you, and with personalized landing pages. And so there's a whole array of new capabilities there. Likewise, what we've seen, especially with COVID, is the consumers are super engaged with what I'll call contactless payment. And think of this as Apple Pay and Google Wallet and some of the new contactless payment systems. But along with those, we've seen a great degree of interest in what I'll call mobile wallet marketing. And an example of that is you're now seeing loyalty programs literally be resident in a consumer's Apple Wallet or Google Wallet, if you will, not just the loyalty card, but brands and marketers can place offers in front of those consumers in that wallet. And so digital wallet is ramping right up. So all of those ways are different ways to serve the consumer mobily. And all of those are new technology initiatives that we've rolled out at Cinch over the course of the last 2 years.
Yep, fantastic. I think, Michael, there is a question from John. It looks interesting. Do you see a payment and messaging merging at some point in terms of peer-to-peer money transfer, micro lending through texting? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, for certain. In fact, well over 10 years ago, I helped Western Union pilot their mobile strategy. They wanted to become a key player globally in the mobile payment space. And so we stood up a text messaging program that allowed peer-to-peer transfers of money. Since that point in time, we've seen Venmo and various mobile payment solutions show up. Western Union's embraced some of them and married them into their app marketing. But absolutely, in fact, in a large percentage of the world, they're what we call unbanked, meaning that they mobile is the way that they engage with their world, and they transfer money in a peer-to-peer sense using simple text messaging or solutions like Venmo and some of the mobile payment solutions. So I absolutely see more of that in the FinServe vertical going forward. And in fact, we're being challenged by some of the brands to help facilitate those strategies going forward.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. Hey, John. I think I hope Michael was able to answer your question. Just to add to what Michael shared, I think it's already in play. If I'm not wrong, in LATAM, to be specific, Brazil. I think WhatsApp is already testing their payment option directly from their messaging platform. So yeah, so definitely in the future it could open up for more peer-to-peer lending or even other forms of money transfer, right? Cool. Michael, we have another question on personalization strategies, right? So let's say if somebody don't have any kind of personalization strategy in place, what would you recommend? How do they get started?
Yeah, excellent question. I think part and parcel to that is having the right kind of technology behind the scenes. And many of the current marketing cloud providers, including our friends at MoEngage, have very complex environments where they can begin to aggregate not just campaign data, but append it with great data that may flow out of CRM or your transactional environment or even a loyalty platform per se that allows for great degrees of personalization. So strategy number one is figure out how to begin to aggregate that data. Some of the brands that we serve are moving towards customer data platforms that tie together this data from various environments inside the enterprise. And others are using their marketing cloud to begin to aggregate that data and personalize those experiences. But that's a good starting point. The CRM environment that you have is full of a slew of great data. And then there's external third-party data providers that can provide you a wealth of data that can be ingested and utilized in some of these campaigns to personalize them and tie them together.
Yeah, sounds good. I would definitely echo that thought. And yep, in fact, that is something that we also hear a lot in our conversation with not just fintech folks or banks that we speak to. It's across industry, right? People have a thought like, hey, do we start with personalizing the name? But when you talk about hyper personalization, it's not just saying, hey, hi Michael, hi Brad, or hi Vincent or hi Megan, right? So it's much more beyond that in terms of what are their choices, what are their preferences, what channels do they want us to reach out to them. And yep, I think to start with, you can get started on the points that Michael said, and probably a right tech stack will also help you do some of these things seamlessly, right? Michael, I think there is a question, not a question, there's an ask from Vincent. Could you move to the previous slide where he can, take the link of the ebook that you were talking about?
I sure can.
Yeah. Hey, Vincent, please use the link that that you see on the screen. Yep. Yep, those are great questions. So, Michael, I think one common thing that we had asked almost in more than two sessions yesterday was about the privacy and the security policy that is constantly changing, right? So we heard about Apple doing the whole overall in terms of their iOS 14. There are a lot of things that are happening on the mobile space. Any thoughts on privacy or PPI?
Oh, for certain. In fact, all the brands that we serve are hyper focused on it today, and rightly so. GDPR is placed, if you will, an obligation on the enterprise to really jealously predict or protect that data, if you will. It's also challenged MoEngage and the Cinches of the world to do exactly the same thing. And so, having said that, I think what's happening with not only Apple, but Google and others in the mobile space is important. They're trying to safeguard consumer data and make sure that it never ends up in the wrong hands. But likewise, the enterprises that are out there need to make sure that their partners, if you will, are GDPR compliant and are safeguarding that data in the same way. That's one of the things at Cinch that we've gone to great pains to do. Typically, we're not aggregating any PII data here at Cinch. But having said that, even as we pass along simple user data and stuff, we go to great lengths to make sure that we're in adherence to GDPR going forward. Here in the US, there's a similar piece of legislation which was driven by California called CCPA that's gotten even a little bit more stringent, and we're trying to make certain that we're compliant with that standard as well.
Yeah. Cool. I'm just going to see if there are any other questions from the audience today. Cool. While we wait for audience to see if they have any other question, I do have another question, Michael. Definitely none of us imagined COVID, and it's a completely different experience now. All of us are working from home, as you can see. And yep, on the same note, I hope the attendees as well as all of us are safe and sound at this time. So how do you think this changed, the entire COVID thing changed about the communication strategy for banks or or fintech space or finance space? If you have to share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, excellent question, Brad. I think it's placed a premium on all kinds of communications tools. I mean, as we think about some of the tools we're all using, be they Zoom or Microsoft Teams or what have you, they've allowed for video collaboration, much like we're doing here today, but they've also allowed for all kinds of chat collaboration and what I'll call the integration of conversational messaging. So having said that, it's imperative that all forms of communications be sort of part and parcel to your strategies going forward. And by that, I mean voice. There's all kinds of simple voice tools that a communications platform as a service provider like Cinch is able to offer that allows for automated voice experiences with the brands. And then likewise, we're seeing more and more reliance on what I'll call chat intelligence, using bots to engage consumers and address 90% of the frequently asked questions that tend to force people to call centers or call their local bank or financial institution for help. Again, those are good experiences, and we're seeing more and more of them stood up in the financial world in particular. So I see all kinds of opportunities to better leverage both messaging and rich forms of communications, including voice and video, to augment the experience that consumers have with your brand.